They actually let you work here? With that look?
She placed the menu down, said nothing.
Unbelievable.
He turned to his guests.
$5,000 a table. And they drag in a black girl who crawled out of an alley.
She stood still. He swirled his bourbon, grinned.
Want $1 million? Say one word of Japanese, just one.
He looked her up and down.
I bet $1 million you can't.
4 Japanese executives sat watching.
Nothing? Go back to the kitchen, girl. That's all you're good for.
She didn't leave. Not this time. She looked the Japanese CEO in the eye and spoke. Fluently, smoothly. Perfect Osaka dialect. Calm, precise, unhurried. Whitfield's smile died.
What did she say?
No one answered. That $1 million bet cost him his deal. $440 million. Gone. But let's rewind. 3 hours earlier, before the bet, before everything fell apart. Kinsley's Steakhouse, Chicago's Gold Coast. The kind of place where men in $3,000 suits talk about money like it's oxygen. Where a single bottle of wine costs more than Monique Carter made in a week. Tonight was different, though. Tonight wasn't just rich men eating expensive steak. Tonight was the final dinner before a $440 million acquisition deal. Douglas Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Dynamics, defense tech, old money, Ivy League, was hosting 4 executives from one of Japan's largest semiconductor companies. If this dinner went well, the deal would close tomorrow morning. Whitfield had hired a professional interpreter, a man named Craig. Stiff suit, expensive tie, textbook Japanese. The kind of translator who gets every word right and every feeling wrong. From the moment the delegation sat down, something was off. The Japanese CEO spoke carefully, measured. Craig translated his words into English, but the meaning kept arriving flat, like a photograph of a sunset, technically accurate, completely lifeless. The CEO would say something layered, something wrapped in cultural nuance, and Craig would flatten it into a simple sentence. Whitfield heard what he wanted to hear. The delegation heard something else entirely. Nobody noticed. Nobody except her. Monique moved between tables quietly, pouring water, clearing plates. Invisible, the way waitresses are supposed to be. But every time she passed that table, her steps slowed. Just slightly. Just enough. Because she understood every single word. Not just the English, the Japanese, the parts Craig missed, the polite frustration buried inside the CEO's sentences, the subtle shift when the CFO muttered something in rapid Osaka dialect that Craig didn't even catch. She heard it all. In the kitchen, her friend Tricia noticed her expression. "You okay?" Monique stacked plates without looking up. That translator is butchering every other sentence. The Japanese side is losing patience, and Whitfield has no idea. Tricia stared at her. "Wait, you understand Japanese?" Monique didn't stop moving. 9 languages, Trish. Nobody ever asked. The kitchen noise filled the silence between them. And out in the dining room, a $440 million deal was quietly falling apart. It happened by accident. Or maybe it was fate getting impatient. The Japanese CEO excused himself from the table. He didn't go to the restroom. He just walked away. Away from the forced smiles. Away from Craig's lifeless translations. Away from Douglas Whitfield's voice, which had been filling the room all night, like a car alarm nobody could turn off. He stopped near the bar, rubbed his temple, loosened his tie 1/2 inch. Then he muttered something to himself in Japanese. Quiet, frustrated. The kind of thing a man says when he thinks nobody is listening. Monique was restocking glasses 3 feet away. She didn't plan what happened next. It just came out. The way words come out when you've carried them inside your chest your whole life, and your mouth finally stops asking permission. She responded, in Japanese, softly. Not the stiff Tokyo standard that Craig had been using all night, but Osaka dialect. Warm, rhythmic. The version that sounds like home, if home is a city where people say what they mean without wrapping it in 4 layers of politeness. She said something simple. Something about the ginger tea being good here. Something about long evenings getting easier with the right cup. He froze, turned, looked at her. Really looked at her. Not the way Whitfield looked at her, which was like looking at a piece of furniture someone forgot to move. This was different. The CEO looked at her the way you look at someone when you suddenly realize they've been standing in the room the whole time and you completely missed it. Then he spoke to her. A full sentence. Testing. Curious. The way you tap a bridge before you trust it with your weight. She answered. Easily. Naturally. No hesitation. No rehearsal. The way 2 people talk when language isn't a performance. It's just a door, and she had the key. For 90 seconds, they stood near the bar, and the rest of the restaurant disappeared. He talked. She listened. She responded. He leaned in, not because he couldn't hear, but because he didn't want to miss a single word. She used his honorifics correctly. She adjusted her speech register to match his seniority, a detail most native speakers wouldn't even notice, let alone a self-taught waitress from the south side of Chicago. She referenced an old Osaka proverb about patience in business. His eyebrows lifted. Then, for the first time all evening, the man smiled. Not the polite smile he'd been giving Whitfield, a real one. He asked where she studied. She said, I taught myself, at the public library, and from a woman from Osaka who used to come into a diner where I worked. I never went to college. I worked at the diner full-time. He went quiet. Not the uncomfortable quiet of pity. Not the awkward quiet of someone who doesn't know what to say. The respectful quiet of a man recalculating everything he thought he knew about the person standing in front of him. From across the restaurant, another man watched all of this unfold. Philip Davenport, 54, senior managing partner at Davenport and Foley, one of Chicago's top international business consultancies. He was dining alone at a corner table, reviewing documents for tomorrow morning's deal signing. Philip was the neutral mediator between Whitfield Dynamics and the Japanese semiconductor firm. Philip had lived in Japan for 3 years during his Peace Corps days. He spoke Japanese, not fluently, but well enough to follow a conversation. Well enough to know that what he was hearing from a waitress near the bar was not phrasebook Japanese. It was not tourist Japanese. It was the real thing. He heard every word. And his face didn't show surprise. It showed something quieter. Recognition. The look of a man who just found exactly what he didn't know he was looking for. He set his fork down, picked up his phone, typed one word into his notes. Monique. She didn't see him watching. She had no idea that in a room full of powerful men, the most important one wasn't the loudest. He was the one sitting alone by the window, eating a steak, saying absolutely nothing. Back in the dining room, the CEO returned to his seat. He said nothing to Whitfield, but his posture had changed, shoulders lower, jaw softer. Something had shifted inside him. And Douglas Whitfield, the smartest man in every room he'd ever walked into, didn't notice a thing. Monique Carter grew up in Englewood, south side of Chicago, the kind of neighborhood where gunshots and ice cream trucks shared the same summer soundtrack. Her mother, Dorothy, worked 2 cleaning jobs, one in the morning at a hotel downtown, one at night in a high-rise office building where international business people worked on every floor. Monique was 9 the first time she sat in that lobby. Dorothy couldn't afford a babysitter, so after school, Monique would ride 2 buses across the city, sit in the marble lobby with her homework, and wait. Sometimes 3 hours, sometimes 5. She didn't have a phone. She didn't have books. She had her ears. French drifted down from the 2nd floor. Japanese from the 4th. Mandarin from the 6th. Portuguese from somewhere she couldn't pin down. Every evening, the elevator doors opened and a new language poured out, like music from a radio she couldn't see, but couldn't stop listening to. She started writing sounds down, phonetically, in a spiral notebook with a torn cover. Then she walked to the Harold Washington Library, 40 minutes each way, and checked out language books, one at a time, because that was the limit. Dorothy saw the notebook stacking up on the kitchen table. She never questioned it, never laughed, never said it was a waste of time. She just said, "If your brain wants to eat, baby, feed it." So Monique fed it. Every night. Every bus ride. Every hour in that lobby. By 16, she was conversational in 4 languages. She applied for a summer internship at an international nonprofit. Listed conversational Japanese and French on her application. The interviewer, a white woman in a gray blazer, smiled at her the way people smile at children who say they want to be astronauts. "That's ambitious, sweetie, but we need people with actual credentials." Monique never listed her languages on anything again. She folded that part of herself away, locked it somewhere private, somewhere sacred, somewhere no one could laugh at it. Now she had a 5-year-old daughter, Nadia. Every night she read to Nadia in a different language. Monday was French. Wednesday was Japanese. Friday was Portuguese. "So she never has to prove she's smart," Monique once told Tricia quietly. "She'll just know." Back at the table, the evening was unraveling. Slowly, quietly, the way a thread pulls loose before the whole suit falls apart. Dessert had arrived. Creme brulee for Whitfield, green tea for the delegation. The conversation had shifted from pleasantries to business, the informal kind that sounds casual but carries the weight of contracts. The Japanese CEO spoke carefully, a long sentence, layered, conditional, the kind of sentence that means everything depends on the next word. Craig translated it. He says they're very excited to move forward with the partnership. Whitfield beamed, clapped his hands once. "I knew it. I told you. This deal was a lock." He signaled for champagne, Dom Pérignon, 2 bottles. But that's not what the CEO said. What the CEO actually said, in precise, deliberate Japanese, was, "We would be inclined to proceed, provided the terms reflect genuine mutual respect and cultural understanding." Provided. Conditional. A maybe dressed in a suit. Not a yes. Not even close. And Craig missed it. Not because he was stupid, because he was trained in textbook Japanese, and textbook Japanese doesn't teach you the difference between what a man says and what a man means. Monique heard both versions, the original and the translation. Standing 6 feet away, clearing dessert plates, she felt her stomach tighten. Whitfield was popping champagne for a yes that didn't exist, and the Japanese delegation, watching him celebrate, sat in silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty, the kind that's full of a decision being made. She should have walked away. She knew that. Every smart bone in her body told her to keep moving, keep clearing plates, keep being invisible. But she thought about the CEO's face near the bar, the way he'd smiled when she spoke his language, the way he'd looked at her, like she was a person, not a prop. She made a choice. As she placed a dessert plate in front of the Japanese CFO, she leaned in, barely, just a fraction, and murmured in Japanese. 8 words, quiet enough that only he could hear. He misunderstood. He thinks you already agreed. The CFO's eyes widened. He glanced at the CEO. A look passed between them, fast, invisible to anyone who wasn't watching. They sat up straighter. The champagne sat untouched. Craig noticed the shift in energy, but couldn't place it. He adjusted his tie nervously. Whitfield noticed nothing. He was already on his phone, texting someone about the done deal. 10 minutes later, Glenn Hargrove, the restaurant's general manager, appeared at Monique's side in the service hallway. His smile was the kind that comes with a warning. Were you talking to the guests at table 9? I was serving dessert. Monique, his voice dropped. Mr. Whitfield spends $50,000 a year in this restaurant. 50,000. Whatever you think you heard, whatever you think you know, it's not your table. It's not your conversation. It's not your business. His hand landed on her shoulder. She stepped back. Are we clear? Crystal. She turned and walked into the kitchen. Tricia was waiting. What happened? Monique picked up a tray. I just changed a $440 million deal with 8 words over creme brulee. And the only person who noticed was a man whose entire job is making sure nobody notices anything. Tricia blinked. What are you going to do? Monique didn't answer. She pushed through the kitchen door, tray balanced on her palm, and walked back into a dining room where a billionaire was celebrating a deal that was already dead. He just didn't know it yet. The champagne sat untouched on the Japanese side. Whitfield didn't notice. He was 3 bourbons deep and holding court like a man who'd already won. He told a story about a trip to Tokyo, how he couldn't understand a word, how the food was weird, how his translator at the time had been some little guy who barely came up to my chest. The table laughed, his people laughed, his associates, his lawyer, his daughter Elise, who smiled but didn't laugh, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth. The Japanese delegation did not laugh. Then Whitfield turned the spotlight back on Monique. She was refilling water glasses. Quiet, methodical, invisible, or trying to be. You know what I love about this country? Whitfield said, loud enough for the tables around him to hear. Everybody thinks they're special. Everybody thinks they've got something. He pointed his glass toward Monique. Even her. I guarantee you, she probably thinks she deserves to be sitting at this table instead of serving it. One of his associates chuckled. Come on, Doug. No, I'm serious. He leaned forward. That's the problem with people like her. They don't know where they fit. You give them a uniform, and they think it's an invitation. The CEO watched Monique's face. She gave nothing away. Not a flinch, not a blink. She set the pitcher down, adjusted a napkin fold, and moved to the next glass. But underneath the table, her hand was shaking. She made it to the service hallway before her chest tightened. She pushed through the bathroom door, gripped the edge of the sink, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection stared back, tired, steady, furious. Tricia found her 30 seconds later. Mo, what happened? Nothing happened. Same thing that always happens. She turned on the faucet, let cold water run over her wrists. A man worth $10 billion just told a room full of people that I don't know my place. And not one person at that table, not one, said a word. You should have said something. You could have... Could have what? Monique turned off the water, dried her hands slowly. Could have spoken Japanese right there? Could have shown him up in front of his guests? And then what, Trish? I'm the angry black woman who made a scene at a 5-star restaurant? I lose my job tomorrow. Nadia loses daycare next week. He flies home in a private jet, and I'm filling out applications at Denny's. Tricia went quiet, because there was no argument. The math was the math. Speaking up cost more than staying silent. And that tax wasn't paid in dollars. It was paid in dignity. One day, Tricia said softly, one day, someone's going to see you, Mo. Really see you. And it's going to be the right person at the right time. Monique hung the towel back on the rack, straightened her apron, looked at herself one more time in the mirror. I'm not holding my breath. She pushed the door open and walked back into the dining room, back to the pitcher, back to the napkins, back to being invisible. And at table 9, Douglas Whitfield was pouring himself another bourbon, smiling at a delegation that had already made up their minds about him 3 courses ago. He just needed one more reason to prove them right, and he was about to give them exactly that. The dinner should have been over by now. 2 hours. That was the plan. A polite meal, some wine, a handshake. See you at the signing tomorrow. But Whitfield kept talking, and the longer he talked, the worse it got. He ordered another round of bourbon, for the whole table. The Japanese delegation politely declined. Craig translated their refusal as, "They said maybe later." They hadn't said maybe later. They'd said no thank you. But Craig had learned early in the evening that Whitfield didn't like hearing no. So Craig softened everything. Every refusal became a maybe. Every hesitation became enthusiasm. Every carefully worded Japanese sentence was stripped of its meaning and fed to Whitfield like candy. And Whitfield ate it all. Monique watched from behind the service station. Every trip to the table was another wound, another sentence mangled, another moment where the gap between what was being said and what was being heard grew wider. The Japanese lead engineer asked a technical question about post-acquisition integration timelines. It was specific, detailed, important. Craig translated it as, he's asking about next steps. Next steps. A 6-sentence technical question reduced to 4 words. Whitfield waved his hand. Tell him we'll figure it out. That's what lawyers are for. He laughed. No one else did. The engineer looked at the CEO. The CEO looked at the CFO. A conversation happened in 3 seconds of eye contact. No words. Just a shared understanding that they were sitting across from a man who didn't respect them enough to listen. Monique set down a plate of miso-glazed salmon in front of the CEO. As she leaned in, the CEO glanced at her, just briefly, and murmured something in Japanese. 2 words. How long? She understood immediately. He wasn't asking about the food. He was asking how long he had to endure this dinner. She paused, then murmured back, barely moving her lips. The dessert course is in 20 minutes. A flicker crossed his face. Almost a smile. Almost relief. He gave her the smallest nod, the kind only someone who spoke his language would recognize as gratitude. From his corner table, Philip Davenport saw the exchange. He couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. He saw the CEO's face before Monique approached. Stone. He saw it after. Human. Whatever she'd said, it mattered. Philip made another note on his phone. 2 words this time. She's real. At the main table, the evening continued its slow collapse. Whitfield was telling another story about himself. The delegation had stopped asking questions. The CFO had closed his notebook. The engineer was checking his watch under the table. Craig sat between 2 worlds, translating nothing of importance because nothing of importance was being said, at least not in English. The real conversation was happening in glances, in silence, in the CEO straightening his tie, which in Japanese business culture meant he was preparing to leave. Not physically, but mentally. He had already checked out. And Monique, carrying plates, clearing glasses, refilling water, was the only person in the room who could read every signal, every micro-expression, every unspoken word. She was watching a $440 million deal bleed out on white tablecloths, and the man who was killing it had no idea he was holding the knife. The champagne from earlier still sat on the Japanese side, untouched. 2 glasses, perfectly poured, going flat. Whitfield hadn't noticed that either. But he was about to do something even Craig couldn't fix. Something that would make the champagne, the mistranslations, and the bad jokes look like minor offenses. He was about to make the bet. It was 9:45 when Philip Davenport stood up from his corner table, folded his napkin, and walked toward the service hallway. He didn't look like a man going to the restroom. He looked like a man who had made a decision. Monique was stacking dessert plates on a tray when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw a man she didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, calm eyes. The kind of face that listens more than it talks. "Excuse me, you're the one who spoke Japanese to the CEO earlier, near the bar." She stiffened. "I was just making conversation with a guest. It's part of the—" "You were speaking Osaka dialect, fluently, with correct honorifics and a business-appropriate register." He said it the way someone states a fact. No accusation, no amazement, just clarity. "I lived in Japan for 3 years. I know what I heard." She didn't respond. Her hands tightened around the tray. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, placed it on the tray next to a stack of dirty plates. Philip Davenport, Senior Managing Partner, Davenport and Foley. "I'm the mediator for the deal happening at that table," he said quietly. "And I'm telling you right now, that deal is dying. Not because of the numbers, because of him." He tilted his head toward the dining room. "His translator is flattening every sentence. The delegation feels disrespected, and Whitfield is too drunk on his own ego to see it." Monique looked at the card, then at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because in about 15 minutes, that man is going to do something that will end this deal permanently. I can see it building. And when it happens, everyone at that table is going to look around for someone who can fix it." He paused. "There won't be anyone. Unless you decide to be in the room." "I'm a waitress." "You're a linguist. The best one in this building tonight. Probably the best one in this city." He said it without flinching, without smiling, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "The question isn't whether you can do this. The question is whether you'll let a man like him decide that you can't." The kitchen noise swelled behind them, plates clanking, a cook shouting an order, the hiss of a grill. Monique stared at the business card sitting on her tray between a smear of chocolate sauce and a crumpled napkin. A card with a name that opened doors, resting on a tray carried by hands that had only ever opened kitchen doors. "If something happens out there," Philip said, turning to leave, "don't look at him. Look at the CEO. Speak to the CEO. The rest will take care of itself." He walked back to his table, sat down, picked up his wine glass as if nothing had happened. Monique stood in the hallway, holding a tray full of dirty plates and a business card that felt heavier than all of them combined. From the dining room, she heard Whitfield's voice rising, louder now, looser. The bourbon was talking. It was almost time. Monique stepped out the back door into the alley behind the restaurant. Cold air hit her face. She leaned against the brick wall and pulled out her phone. 1 ring. 2. 3. "Mo, you okay? You never call during a shift." Trisha had gone home an hour ago. Her voice was half asleep, half worried. "Trish, I'm standing in a hallway that smells like steak and bleach, holding a business card from a man who runs one of the biggest consulting firms in Chicago. He just told me I'm the best linguist in the city." Silence. "Are you messing with me?" "He wants me to step in. If something goes wrong at the table tonight, he wants me to speak to the delegation. Directly." "Then do it." "Trish, I'm wearing a uniform with a ketchup stain on the sleeve. I make $11.50 an hour. I don't belong in that conversation." "Mo," Trisha's voice changed, sharper now, awake. "You've been belonging in that conversation since you were 9 years old sitting in that lobby. The only difference is, tonight, somebody finally noticed." Monique closed her eyes, let the cold air fill her lungs. "What if I mess up? What if you don't?" She hung up, stood there for a moment. Then she looked at her phone's lock screen. A photo of Nadia sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, holding a picture book with Japanese characters on the cover. Her daughter's face was scrunched up in concentration, little finger tracing the lines of a word she was just learning to read. Monique stared at that photo for a long time. She thought about Dorothy, riding 2 buses to clean offices so her daughter could sit in a lobby and listen. She thought about the spiral notebooks, the library books, the woman from Osaka at the diner who taught her how to count to 10, then to 100, then to 1,000, who'd never once asked why a black girl from Englewood wanted to learn Japanese, who just taught her because she asked. She thought about the interviewer in the gray blazer. We need people with actual credentials. She thought about Whitfield. That's all you're good for. She thought about Nadia, reading Japanese on a Tuesday night in a one-bedroom apartment on the South Side. 5 years old, already further than anyone ever expected her mother to go. Monique put her phone in her pocket, straightened her uniform, wiped the ketchup stain with her thumb. It didn't come off, but she tried. Then she walked back inside, not as a waitress, not yet as anything else, but as someone who had decided, finally, quietly, irreversibly, to stop hiding. It started with the bourbon, the fourth one, maybe the fifth. Nobody was counting anymore except the people who were about to pay the price. Whitfield loosened his tie. He leaned back in his chair the way men lean back when they think the world is a show and they're the only one on stage. You know what I love about doing business with the Japanese? He raised his glass toward the delegation. They're polite. Too polite. You never know what they're really thinking. Craig shifted in his seat. The delegation sat motionless. The CEO's hands were folded on the table, still, precise, the way a man holds himself when he's measuring every word being said about him. But that's the beauty of money, right? Whitfield continued. Money speaks every language. Money doesn't need a translator. He laughed at his own joke. His associates laughed with him. Elise stared at her plate. Then his eyes drifted across the room, found Monique. She was standing near the service station, straightening napkins. Quiet. Still. Watching without appearing to watch. Hey! Hey, that black girl! The room shifted. Conversations at nearby tables dimmed. She turned around. Come here for a second. She walked over, steady. The water pitcher wasn't in her hand this time. Just her. Standing in front of a table of billionaires and executives, wearing an $11.50 an hour uniform with a ketchup stain she couldn't get off. I want to show my guests something. Whitfield grinned at the delegation. A little demonstration. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, turned the screen toward her. See that number? That's my checking account. One of them. He set the phone on the table. I will transfer $1 million right now, tonight, if you can say a single sentence in Japanese. The table went silent. Craig's face went pale. The Japanese CFO set down his pen. The engineer stopped writing. One sentence, Whitfield repeated. That's all. Just prove me wrong. She stood there, looking at him. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? He turned to his guests. See, this is what I'm talking about. You put a uniform on someone and they think there's something. But underneath? He waved his hand at her. Nothing. Empty. A girl like this probably can't even point to Japan on a map. Monique didn't move. Philip Davenport, across the restaurant, set down his wine glass. His jaw tightened. He watched her face, not Whitfield's. Hers. Go ahead, Whitfield pressed. One sentence. Any sentence. Even hello counts. He held up a finger. $1 million. The 4 Japanese executives watched her. The CEO unfolded his hands. For the first time all evening, he leaned forward. And Monique made a choice. Not the choice she'd made 100 times before. Swallow it, smile, walk away, protect the job, protect Nadia, protect the fragile scaffolding of a life held together with double shifts and binder clips. A different choice. She turned away from Whitfield, completely, as if he wasn't there. As if a man worth $10 billion had just become invisible in his own restaurant. She faced the Japanese CEO, looked him in the eye, and spoke. Not one sentence, 3. Fluent, smooth, perfect Osaka dialect. The same dialect she'd used at the bar, the same warmth, the same precision. But this time, it wasn't a conversation about ginger tea. This time, it carried weight. She told the CEO, calmly, precisely, without a tremor in her voice, that Craig had mistranslated at least 3 critical statements during the evening. That the CEO's conditional agreement had been translated as unconditional enthusiasm. That Whitfield believed the deal was already closed, based on words the CEO had never actually said. She told him the truth, in his language, in his dialect, in front of everyone. The room went dead silent. Whitfield's grin froze. He looked around the table. Craig's face was white. The CFO had stopped breathing. The engineer was staring at Monique like she'd just materialized out of thin air. What did she say? Whitfield's voice cracked. Craig, what did she say? Craig opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The CEO stood up. Not fast, not dramatic. Slowly, deliberately. The way a man stands when he has already made his decision and is now simply delivering it. He spoke, in Japanese, directly to Whitfield, even though Whitfield couldn't understand a word. Monique translated, her voice steady, her eyes forward. He says, Mr. Whitfield, you just bet $1 million to humiliate a woman you believed was beneath you. She has proven she is more capable than the translator you hired. If you misjudge people this badly, I cannot trust you to manage a partnership worth $440 million. Whitfield's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The CEO continued. Monique translated. He says, the way a man treats someone he considers powerless reveals exactly how he will treat a partner once he believes he has the upper hand. I have seen enough tonight. The CEO reached for his jacket. The CFO closed his notebook. The engineer capped his pen. 4 men, 4 movements, synchronized, final. Then the CEO did something no one expected. He turned to Monique, bowed. Not the casual bow, the deep one. The bow of genuine respect, the kind reserved for someone you consider an equal. Monique bowed back. Exact depth, exact duration. Perfect. When she straightened up, the CEO said one more sentence. Short, quiet, just for her. She didn't translate it for the table. She just nodded. And for the first time all night, a small, barely visible smile crossed her face. The delegation walked out. No handshake, no goodnight. Just the sound of 4 chairs pushing back and 4 pairs of shoes crossing a marble floor. Whitfield sat alone at a table set for 9, 2 bottles of Dom Perignon untouched. His phone still open to his banking app. $1 million he'd offered as a joke. $440 million he'd lost because of it. The restaurant was quiet now. Jazz still playing, silverware still. The same room, the same lights, the same white tablecloths. But everything had changed. Philip Davenport watched from his corner table. He picked up his phone, deleted the notes he'd made earlier, typed a new one. 3 words. Call her tomorrow. The call came at 7:15 the next morning. Monique was sitting at the kitchen table. Nadia was eating cereal across from her, humming a song she'd learned at daycare. The apartment smelled like instant coffee and toast, the smell of every morning, the smell of a life held together by routine and willpower. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Monique Carter? Who's asking? Philip Davenport. We spoke last night at the restaurant. I gave you my card. She looked across the kitchen. The business card was on the counter, propped against the salt shaker. She'd almost thrown it away. Almost. I remember. I'll get straight to it. The Japanese delegation is still in Chicago. They leave tomorrow. The deal with Whitfield is dead. You already know that. But they didn't fly 6,000 miles to go home empty-handed. He paused. They want to meet. Not with Whitfield, not with my firm, with you. Monique set down her coffee. With me? The CEO asked for you by name, specifically. He wants to discuss a potential consulting relationship. Not through a firm, not through a middleman. Directly with you. Another pause. I'm also offering you a position at Davenport and Foley. Cultural liaison and linguistic consultant. Full-time. Benefits. A salary that doesn't start with 11. Nadia looked up from her cereal. Mommy, who's on the phone? Monique covered the receiver. Someone from work, baby. She took a breath. Mr. Davenport, I don't have a degree. I don't have a resume. I don't even have a suit. Monique, last night you translated a live business negotiation in Osaka dialect Japanese with more accuracy than a certified interpreter. You read cultural signals that a room full of executives missed, and you did it in a waitress uniform with a ketchup stain on the sleeve. His voice didn't waver. I'm not hiring a resume. I'm hiring what I saw. Can you be downtown by 10? She looked at Nadia. Nadia looked back, spoon halfway to her mouth, milk dripping on the table. I'll be there. She hung up, sat still for 10 seconds. Then she called Trisha. Trish, I need a suit. Trisha showed up in 20 minutes. She brought a blazer from her cousin who worked in real estate. Charcoal gray, slightly too big in the shoulders. A white blouse. A pair of black heels that were half a size too small. Monique pinned the blazer in the back with a binder clip, tucked the blouse, squeezed into the heels, looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. A woman wearing borrowed clothes held together with office supplies, about to walk into a room that could change her life. You look like a CEO, Trisha said from the doorway. I look like a waitress in a borrowed suit. Same thing. One just hasn't been promoted yet. The lobby of Davenport and Foley was marble and glass. Cold. Bright. The kind of building Monique's mother had cleaned for 18 years. The kind of building Monique had sat in as a child, legs dangling from a chair too tall for her, listening to languages pour from elevator doors. The security guard looked at her, looked at the blazer. The binder clip was hidden, but the shoes were scuffed. Can I help you? I'm here for the Whitfield Osaka meeting. Philip Davenport is expecting me. He checked his screen. His eyebrows rose. Just barely. Just enough. He handed her a visitor badge. Her name. Printed. Official. Monique Carter. First time all story someone gave her a badge with her name on it. Philip met her in the hallway outside the conference room. He didn't comment on the suit, didn't look at the binder clip. He handed her a legal pad and a pen with the firm's logo embossed in silver. The delegation is inside. I told them you'd be here at 10. It's 9:58. You're early. That matters more than you think. He opened the door. The conference room was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. A long mahogany table. And seated on one side, the 4 Japanese executives. The same men who'd sat across from Whitfield last night. The same men who'd watched her pour water, endure insults, and then speak their language like she'd been born into it. The CEO stood when she entered. Not because protocol demanded it, because respect did. He walked toward her, reached into his briefcase and removed a small lacquered box. Dark red, hand-finished. The kind of object that carries meaning far beyond its size. He opened it. Inside was a meishi ide, a traditional Japanese business card holder, hand-lacquered, the kind given to valued business partners, the kind that says, your name deserves to be carried with care. He presented it with both hands, bowed, the deep bow, the same one he'd given her at the restaurant, but this time in a boardroom, in daylight, with witnesses. Monique accepted it with both hands, bowed back. Exact depth, exact duration. When she straightened up, the CEO spoke. Philip translated quietly. He says he has been looking for a cultural bridge between his company and Western markets for 2 years. Last night, he found one. He would like to discuss a long-term consulting relationship, directly with you. Monique looked at the Meishi Ide in her hands, a card case for a name that had been ignored, dismissed, and laughed at for 28 years. Philip pulled out a chair for her. Not a folding chair in the corner, the main seat, the one facing the windows, the skyline, the city she'd grown up invisible in. Sit down, Monique. You've earned this. She sat, placed the legal pad in front of her, uncapped the pen, and for the first time in her life, someone asked her what she thought, and waited for the answer. That evening she went back to Kinsley's, not to work, to resign. Glenn was behind the bar when she walked in. Monique, your shift doesn't start until... I'm not here for my shift, Glenn. She untied her apron, folded it, slow, precise, the same meticulous fold she'd used on napkins every night for 3 years. She placed it on the bar. Glenn stared at it. You can't just... I'm not leaving because I'm angry. Her voice was calm, steady. The same voice she'd used to translate a CEO's words that ended a $440 million deal. I'm leaving because someone finally asked me what I could do, instead of telling me what I couldn't. She picked up a water glass from the bar, held it up to the light, the same kind of glass she'd filled 1,000 times. Then she set it down, gently, like putting a chapter to rest. Tricia was standing near the kitchen door, crying. They hugged, long, tight, the kind of hug between two women who know exactly what the other one has survived. Go be somebody, Mo. I already was, Trish. Nobody was looking. In the car, Monique called her mother. Dorothy picked up on the second ring. She always picked up on the second ring, never the first, because she liked to set her cleaning rag down properly, and never the third, because her daughter might need her. Baby, everything okay? Mama, I need to tell you something. She told her. All of it. The dinner, the bet, the Japanese CEO, the translations, Philip Davenport, the conference room, the Meishi Ide, the chair they pulled out for her, the job offer, the resignation. Dorothy listened, didn't interrupt, didn't gasp, didn't cry. She just listened the way she'd always listened, completely, patiently, like every word her daughter said mattered more than anything else in the world. When Monique finished, the line went quiet. Then Dorothy spoke. Baby, I cleaned those offices for 18 years. 18 years of mopping floors and emptying trash cans so I could keep the lights on and you could sit in that lobby after school. Her voice cracked, just barely, just once. I watched you sitting there with your homework, and I saw your eyes. You weren't doing homework, Monique. You were listening. Every night, every language. I saw those notebooks pile up on the kitchen table, and I never said a word. Because I knew. I always knew. You were listening for a reason. Monique couldn't speak. Her hand was pressed against her mouth. Tears running down her face, in the back seat of a taxi on Michigan Avenue, the Chicago skyline blurring through the window. Mama, don't you dare thank me, Dorothy's voice steadied. I didn't give you those languages. I gave you a lobby and a bus pass. You did the rest. Every single word. You did that yourself. The taxi driver glanced in the rearview mirror, looked away. Some moments aren't meant to be watched. Monique Carter didn't go viral. She didn't post a video. She didn't get $1 million check from a man who thought she was nothing. She got something Douglas Whitfield could never buy. She got seen. Within 6 months, she was managing cross-cultural communications for 3 international deals through Philip Davenport's firm. Within a year, she built her own consultancy, Carter Cultural Partners, with the Japanese semiconductor company as her founding client. She still reads to Nadia in a different language every night. Monday is French, Wednesday is Japanese, Friday is Portuguese. But now, sometimes, Nadia reads back. Tomorrow you're going to walk past someone, a cashier, a janitor, a barista, a server, someone whose name you'll never ask and whose story you'll never hear. But they have one. They might speak 4 languages. They might write poetry at 2 a.m. They might be holding a dream together with a binder clip and a prayer. So here's what I'm asking. Don't ask them what they do. Ask them what they're good at. You'd be amazed what people will tell you if you ask like you actually want to know. And if you're in a position to do more, hire the person without the degree. Fund the library that stays open late. Build the internship that doesn't require a resume from a school that costs $60,000 a year. Talent doesn't have a zip code. It has a heartbeat. If this story reminded you of someone, or reminded you of yourself, tell me. Drop it in the comments. Tell me about the person in your life who never got their boardroom moment. Or tell me about yours. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight, and subscribe, because there are more stories like this one, and they deserve to be told. Monique Carter is fictional. The people she represents are not. And the world is full of Moniques. Start asking. Start listening. Start seeing.
Can I be real with you for a second? We never ask. That's the problem. We look at someone, their uniform, their job, their skill, and we think we already know the answer. So we never ask the question. What can you do? What do you know? What's inside you? We skip it every time because we already decided. And that's not their loss. That's ours. Every person you walk past without asking, that's the door you choose to keep closed. And you have no idea what's on the other side. Maybe nothing, but maybe everything. You never know because you never ask. And here's what really gets me. The people who achieve the most are always the one who lose the most. Always. Because when you decide someone is nothing, you stop paying attention. And while you are not paying attention, they are growing, they are learning, they are becoming something you never saw coming. And by the time you realize it, it's too late. The deal is gone, the moment is gone, and you're sitting there wondering what happened. So tomorrow, ask someone the real question, not how are you, something real. What are you good at? You might be standing next to someone extraordinary and not even know it. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice, every week. And remember, talent doesn't have a dress code. Start asking, start listening, start seeing.